So I'm going to expand the primary colors, and I'm going to start with a dark yellow brown, which is sienna, of course, and I want to line them up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'll have the three primary colors and three different values and hues of each of those. So I'm going to start with my darker ones, and that is raw sienna, and I'm going to go up from raw sienna to Naples Yellow, which is a little brighter yellow, of course, and here, a very nice Naples Yellow, by the way. And I'm going to move up from there to Cad Yellow. So now I have three varieties of yellow that are going to be excellent for French Impressionism. And as you can see, the value increases and the intensity of the color increases. I'm going to also go now to the blue, and I'm going to start at the bottom with the Prussian Blue. And here's the Prussian, very dark, almost black. It's hard to even see that it's blue, but I will expand it a little bit so you can see. A nice Prussian blue, dark blue. That's going to make some very beautiful greens. So I have the Prussian blue, and then up from there, I have cerulean blue, and I'm going to put it there. And then I have one more above that, which in this case is called light cerulean blue, but it's a light blue, and you can just probably look in your art supply and find a lighter blue. We're going to need that. These softer, lighter colors for this particular project. And so we got yellow, blue, and now we're going to do red. And we'll start with a Elysian crimson, which is a dark red, of course. You're aware of that. There's Elysian crimson for us. And then we're going to move up to cadmium red. Now, in some places like California, it's not easy to get cadmium colors. They have a prejudice against cadmium colors, and apparently there were some studies that say the cadmium colors increase your risk to cancer. And so this is a warning if you want to check with your doctor first, and you can just substitute other colors. Other brands before you get involved. Now, and then I'm going to brighten this up with a very nice red orange. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to paint these flowers are arranged in such a way that the taller ones are in the center, and then there's, of course, a lot of green happening, and then there's another set of lower flowers that run around there. So the flowers, again, the middle flowers, you'll see their green leaves. And again, I'm using this technique of just different yellows. I'm using the different yellows. I'm going to use some of the different blues and let some of this blend right on the canvas. I'll put in some darker blues here. And I want to have some nice shape. Don't forget that crescent shape that's growing here. And let the brush itself talk. It's a rounded brush, and it has some very pretty shapes it will create some very pretty shapes if you allow it to. If you stifle the brush, you won't get these things. So I'm letting this happen, and I'm going to work my way up a little higher and adding some yellows, some blues. It's giving us all different shades of green, which is very interesting, very pretty. Brush strokes mostly up and some angular, and I'm getting that look right along to here. And I don't want to lose the shape, so I'll get a little darker along the edge. Same here. I'm going to start in the center using the yellows and the dark blue, and I'm going to start back here and let these flowers get taller, because we'll see the ones in front here and we'll see the ones in front there, but the flowers that are planted in the center will overpower the ones behind. So once again, lots of green. And so to get that lots of green, we're just using the different blues. Here's some middle tone blues, some dark blue, and I'm just pushing them in. And with the yellows, two different types of yellows. We're using the middle tone yellow, the Naples, and here's some little extra here, and the very canary yellow, that very bright yellow. And we're getting lots of different shapes, lots of things. And as I come around, they'll be taller, as you can see. They'll be taller here and around. Some yellows as we come to this area, and still keeping these nice and tall. And I'm getting that crescent shape that I'm looking for here. So I do have that one and that one. And these are growing around a tree, so I'm going to make them taller here and here, as though, because I will plant that tree, not yet, but I will. And I'm not concerned about that because I am working in oil paints, and they're wet, and I can do just about anything I want with them at this point. And like I said, a little more blue on this one, and so on. And we do have shadows to put in. So here we are. Now I'm going to make this a little darker, and especially here across the front. I think I'm going to make that even. The blues, I'll add some darker blues to emphasize this shadow as it comes around, and maybe here give us a little more emphasis on the turn of that. And I'm looking at this, and I think on this side I'm going to bring in some more yellows here and here and here and here. Okay, so now we've got the beginnings. These are lots of leaves, flower leaves. And then in front of those leaves, we have some purplish blue looking flowers. And so I'm going to use the lighter blue to get started with that. And I'll get a little liquid on my brush. I wipe the brush out. I'll get a little liquid here on my brush. And I'm going to start to just low. Now, keep these low, mostly dots. Let them work in the front of these others. And it will emphasize the turn here, as you can see. It's going to emphasize the turn of this landscaping. And this is very pretty landscaping, too. They have a group of people here, some volunteers and a few that are employees. And they really have this down to a science. They really work this beautifully. And again here, I'm going to emphasize the flowers in the front. And as you can see, the brush strokes that we put down on the grass originally are going to need work. We're going to need shadows. We're going to need some taller grasses and things. We'll make this work right around. And the same here. Let it work here. But the boxing in that we put in now all of a sudden is almost completely gone. And we'll go around the tree, same way. So these are very interesting bits. And again, I'm just making dots. The same way we did the dots for the sky, we're doing it here. And what I told you at the beginning of this session was we're going to use several different techniques. And we did dots with the sky and blended them, and then we used straight lines for the ocean, and then we used a scumble technique for the grounds in the back and this rip-rap wall. And now here we're back to little dots. And not bad. I think I'll put a couple back here too. Not that you're going to see much of them once the tree is in there. So here we are, looking pretty decent. One of the advantages of working your paint from a palette like that onto a paper palette, or in this case, a foam dish, is that I can use several without having a big mush. So on some of these forward flowers, the ones that are kind of like ground cover, there's bits of purple in there. And so I mixed on the canvas, the orange that we're using, of course, the dark blue, and white. And we got some pretty nice, 1, 2, 3, 4, pretty nice examples of purples. And I like this one best, particularly. I think it'll look very nice with that. So I've worked those on the plate, and I'm going to work those into, actually I'll do it right now. I'm going to work these into, not totally, I'm going to put in some areas. And it'll just, your eye will catch it. Don't forget, this is Impressionism. So I just want to give some areas of purple here and there, and here, maybe a couple standing out, some over here for sure. So I'm going to continue with this purple, and I like that kind of dark purple also. I'll put some of that in. This is Impressionism, so we have lots of opportunities for all these very pretty colors. And I'm going to use some of this kind of red purple also in it. That's nice. I might use that for the flowers up on top. And I'll put some in here. And again, what the Impressionists, what they used to say about Impressionist painting, especially in France, is that they're painting with light. And that gives you a lot of opportunity for many different shades. If you wanted a purple and you mixed it on the canvas, for instance, that's a little too much red. I'm going to paint right into it with some blues, soften it down because I want to do the red for the flowers. All right, so here, and I put some here, maybe a little bit here, a couple of hits here and there. Now we're starting to get the beauty of color. We're going to work from here into the flowers. I'm going to go back here now. I got this orange that we have. And of course, those flowers are tall, and they're up here. And they're on, of course, stalks. And I'm going to use a motion that makes them taller. And all different sizes, of course. And I'm using the orange. And I'm going to work my way right around with this. Again, now these are just little marks. They're very heavy. You see the paint? There's no media in it. It's very thick paint. And I'm going to use it similar to the way we will use a palette knife in a little while. But at this point, we're just using the brush to lay this paint on nice and thick. And what I said before, was we're going to do thick over thin, and that's exactly what we're doing here. We're painting thick paint over thin paint. We're starting to get that look. And I'll do it here. Let these flowers grow over the top of all these green leaves. And as they make the turn and come into the middle, and they may start to mix with the wet paint, but that's okay, it's no problem. It's just the beauty of the change, the color mixing that many students write in and ask about and say, oh, I don't know how to mix colors. If you follow the techniques that I'm showing you in these lessons, a lot of times the brush strokes and the number of ways, and the direction of the brush strokes will create blends. And you don't even have to worry about it. Don't make a big deal about it. And it's, again, thick over thin. Here's that very thick orange paint. And it's really thick there, and I kind of like that. I'll let it run right around the other side of this ellipse. And over here, some there. It's starting to come. It's starting to look like what you would see over at Enders. And here, roll it right around. Monet really loved to paint flowers, and he painted them all the time, all different times of the year and so on. So it's advisable, if you have some extra time and you are studying artwork, painting, visit a website or a history site that'll give you a little more information about the man himself. Okay, looking pretty decent. I'm going to use that I'm going to move a little more of that orange in here, and I'm going to use some white. And I want to make a little lighter areas. Same thing, I'm staying very thick with the paint. I'm making a light orange, and I'm just going to put some of that in to give another dimension to some of these flowers, rather than being completely, some of them are dark, an area here that's a little dark, and I'll lighten it up, and I'll do the same here, especially. I see some dark areas, and I'm just giving you kind of a very light orange. I'm going to need some more white for that. So here I am adding the white to the orange, laying it on very heavy and happy. And again, it's just dots of paint giving us this nice turn and around. And I'm even going to throw in just the white like that. I'll do that here, maybe a little here, maybe some. My brush is dirty with orange paint, and I'm just picking up the white paint and laying it on. So I have changes as I go around. Same here, this is a little dark, and I'm going to use some white, some orange, and lay it on here, and a couple of stray flowers on this side and here. All right, so we're starting to get the shape of that. Also, around these, which is really interesting, around these shapes, there are white stones. And so I'm going to get some white, the white that I just put on, and I'm going to start to shape this around. They work right around, and they give a nice contrast to all this green. And so on, go right around, finish that shape. And they're kind of pretty, and it's where, of course, they make a boundary around these very pretty flowers. And I'll let this run right around, just like this. And again, I'm doing very heavy paint here. The white straight out of the tube. But it's creating and recreating the shape that the landscapers wanted. And I'm going to go around the tree here. It's starting to have color. It's starting to look pretty. Now, you remember our tonalistic painting and our American Impressionistic painting. Colors were not quite this thick and not quite this bright. Here and here. American Impressionism can use heavy paint like this, but it wasn't done too often. And I'm going to run around this way and create this kind of boomerang shape. I think it's very pretty, though. If you were over at Enders, you would think this was really something to see. And here, and here. Now, Enders Island is a retreat, and originally was set up, it was a gift, the house, the beautiful old house that's there, made in the craftsman style. Yeah, kind of cool. Looks a little bit like a birthday cake. Anyway, Enders Island was donated to the Catholic Church, and the Edmundite brothers took charge. And now it's open as a place for people to go. It's quiet. It's an island all by itself out in Long Island Sound. There's a causeway to get out to it. And they have special events there and so on. And if you get a minute, go online and see. They do have classes there, art classes too, that you might be interested in going and spending a week out on the island. I think you would enjoy that. Back to our flowers in the background. I'm going to use, if you remember, we have a darker red. So I'm going to use a darker red back there. I'm going to take that, put it on the palette that I'm using now to create flowers. I'm going to use that. And in the same way, I'm going to work in some red flowers back here. Maybe some on this bush, some here. Starting to have a very pretty, colorful effect. And I think that the French Impressionists were very smart, and even the Post-Impressionists like Seurat, who used the pointillist system, basically invented the pointillist system, and the little dots of paint, of course, blend in your eye. In an attempt to keep my paints pretty much unpolluted, when you get to this point, it's almost useless to try to save those. As you can see, they're all mushed together, and to come up with anything that looks bright and clean is not going to happen. So get yourself another plate. And these are foam plates. They're really inexpensive at the grocery store. And as they get dirty, just discard them. But again, I have my paints in storage over here. So I'm gonna put, this is middle ground, of course, you know, this background, and there's middle ground and foreground right now. And this is foreground. Pretty much part of that is middle ground. And so what I want to do is I'm going to introduce a tree, this tree where the flowers are planted around it. And it's a big tree, so I'm going to use a relatively large brush, and I'm going to get some of my darker paints. I'll use some of our deep brown, and I'll use some of the blue. Now, why are you using blue and brown? Because I'm going to get a warm side and a cool side to the trunk of this tree. And I'm going to start there. I'll break this paint with a little bit of liquid. Wipe my brush out, still has orange paint in it. And I'll get some of the media, and I'm going to first cut it in. I'll cut the tree in, and it's a big old tree. It goes up from the center of this. Now all of my paint is still wet, so it's going to drag in and give me all kinds of halftones. And I welcome that. I welcome the fact that it's helping me. I worked brown on that side. I worked the dark blue on this side. And I'm going to come up and just let the paint talk. I'm going to separate. Well, first of all, let's get the rest of the trunk up. And go up, 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 up. So I got the rest of the trunk of the tree up. Now I'm going to give it a big old branch here. Big limb bough coming out. And right into there. My painting is still very wet, so I can paint right over it. I'll separate this. And if you really get into painting trees, there is a theory created by Fibonacci which tells you how many times these things separate. So we started one and had two, and then two would have four, and it goes on and on. And it's worth looking at. It's a little bit much for artists. However, it will give your paintings, here I'm going to make this have two. It will give your painting these flower beds. When we planted a tree, the tree needs some light, so I'm going to use some yellow, and I'm going to use, there it is, nice green made out of the soft blue and the yellow. And I'm going to start to light some of this. We're going to let the light come in this way. Now this was done mostly with the palette knife, and I'm going to use this particular brush in a similar manner as the palette knife. So now, of course, it's very heavy. The palette knife paint is very heavy, as you can see. And I'm going to work this side. And I'm going to light up some of these and light up some of these areas of leaves, and maybe a few up in here also. Okay. So now we got some contrast. Maybe I'll bring in a little extra yellows here and really light the top of this and the top of this. Again, this is a painting. I don't have to copy nature. I have to create something pretty. And that's what I'm after here. I want some soft. Now, those may be a little bit much, so I'm going to come into them with some of my lighter greens. And don't forget that leaves usually work in big, clumpy areas. So I'm going to get some of that happening in here. All right, now, from here, I want to paint foreground. There's no foreground yet. I know my grass still needs work, and I'll get to that in a minute. Well, right now, I want to go back to my palette knife, and I'm going to use a rounded palette knife. As you can see, it's not the small flat that we've been using, the diamond shape, but I'm going to use this rounded palette knife, and I'm going to put it in an area here and one over here of very close flowers. And I'm going to use, I have black, I'm going to have some blue, and I'm going to put in the leaves of the flowers. They're going to crawl up this side of the painting. And I'll really allow them to come forward. I'm not worried about any of this. And let them happen in a very nice. Now this rounded palette knife gives me some very nice round shapes, as you can see. You don't get with the sharpness of the smaller diamond shaped palette knife. So I'm going to cut some of these in. I'm using blue, and I'm using some black, and I'm using dark blue. I'm going to use all three blues. Here's my light blue, here's my middle value blue, and I'm going to let all of these create some very nice greens for me. I'm going to go right up and cover over some of this. I'm not concerned about that. I want it nice and dark down here, although the frame will probably cover about 1/8 of an inch at the bottom of this. I'm going to go over that. Get a little deeper here. I don't want to lose that. Of course, it mixed here with the white. Now, instead of being white, I want this to have more yellow to it. So it becomes more green than white, and here it is. And it gets thick at the bottom, you know how flowers are. And I'm going to do it, I'm going to give it a symmetry where the flowers, the larger flowers in the foreground will be here, and I'll put some larger flowers here. And then we'll throw some shadows to light the middle ground a little more. I'm going to go with the same colors. And I'm going to use the dark blue to begin with. And I'll let this poke its way up. I have more yellow, so these particular leaves are going to be more light green than these dark ones here. I'm going to let this happen. Now we're mixing right on the canvas. So I have some dark blue and yellow, and I'm really going to lay this on because I want a very nice foreground. And here it is. Here. And I'll put some stalks, some lines for the, here we are. Let this interfere into the front of the painting. And up and up and up. Right into here. And maybe a little more yellow on this side, so it's facing the sunshine. Okay, and now, all right, so I got dark leaves for flowers and lighter green leaves for flowers, kind of symmetrical running across the front. I think I'll put some down here also. I'll put a nice clump of flowers here, and maybe some right in here, just to interfere a little bit with our flower beds, so it's not, make it a little more exciting. So you got to look through these larger flowers to see all of that landscaping. Now, I'm going to go back to my small round brush here, and what I'll do with this is I'm going to put on the darker leaves, I'm going to put, we've got a lot of red flowers. I think I'd like to put in here perhaps, what? I don't want to put white because those stones, actually those stones in my vision, in my view, are too light for this painting. So what I'm going to do now is do a little corrective painting. I have the light blue, and I'm going to work into some of this white. It's really a little, you know, I know they're white stones and so on, but I'm going to work into this. I want to calm this down. The whiteness of those stones in my eye are interfering with my painting. So I'm going to calm that down. Really lay this paint in like you mean it. So it takes the curse off of that strong white that surrounds them. Again, this is a painting. It's not a photograph, so I have artistic license. And I'm going to use it. And I'm going to use it here. And let those stones run across the front. And they're kind of blue and white. Okay, a little better. That's better. Not quite so harsh in the front. Sometimes the paint that comes straight out of the tube, which the Frenchman did use, in my eye, in my Italian-American eye, is a little bit too much. So now I'm going to get some nice large flowers in my foreground, and rather than red, I'm going to use orange. I'm going to go back to our orange, and I'm going to make some pretty large flowers out here. So, and I'm going to make quite a few of these, so I'm going to really lay this on. You can see there's a lot of paint on that brush. And I'm going to make them turn all different ways, here and here. And you know how flowers, they, like little faces, they face all different ways. And as you can see, I'm laying it on very heavy. And another one, a whole cluster of flowers there. And I'll put a few lower ones down here and another one here. Maybe a couple more, really load the top of this. And one here, and one here, and one here. I got some very pretty flowers, red flowers, going on from this group. And I will add, what I'm going to add is a little bit of white, and I'm going to drive it into those big clumps of flowers here and there. Maybe this one, maybe a little one here in the darker part, and some here, maybe here. Not too much, and I want to overdo it. But I'll put some, just to give me a little more contrast. And I'm not satisfied with that spot. It looks a little bit clustered, so I'm going to really lay a heavy one on there, and one here. And now I have the left side of my foreground with some very pretty flowers. Now also I'm going to lighten up. I'm going to use a lighter green, and as you can see, I've been using these paper plates like crazy, and I've got maybe 4 or 5 so far, because I'm trying to keep the paint. If you have just one palette, you'll get to the point where the palette is so mushed up that it's almost absurd to continue with it. So I'm going to use some of this light blue. Well, my brush is full of red, so I'm going to clean the red out of it for a second. And I'm going to go back to my light blue. And I'm going to introduce some of that light blue into these darker leaves here and here. So it looks like the leaves have a top side. Light's hitting them here and there. Another one here. All right. Okay. And I think that's not too bad. The light's coming in. Now over here in this lighter color, maybe there we can use straight white and pink to put some white flowers in on these lighter colored stems. I want to shadow a little bit from that tree. So I want to get a few shadows. I'm going to use a darker green, or maybe even mix a purple, so that I have some shadow areas, maybe in here from this tree, maybe from the leaves back there, and then light the area that's behind them. So, you remember before we made the purple? Here it is, still have the palette. So I'm going to use some of this purple that we made up before, and I'm going to, not quite dark enough, needs more blue. Blue, and I'm going to I'm going to cast the shadow from this tree. Cast the shadow from the tree. Go down, 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 down. And the darker your shadow is, the more sunshine you'll be casting into your project. So, I'm not going to use black. I'll put a little bit of black into it, but I'm not going to use solely black. And I'll let this come out the other side. And on this side, I'll make, because of the leaves, light will come through them and cast a shadow on this side. And I'm going to soften that a little bit with some medium and create a blue-gray, and create a blue-gray shadow from the leaves down here. And over here and here. Everything is still very wet, but it makes a very pretty long shadow. And I may even throw a little bit of shadow right in here. And as you can see, this starts to get very dense. The area, see, these leaves are casting a shadow down. Whoops. I need the blue-gray. And here it is. And I'm casting the shadow downward. And it's got to look like a shadow from leaves. Not too bad. That's working. And I touched one of the flowers and I made it too light. But I'm going to redo it. Here and here. And here. Let it go out a little ways. And there. Okay. Not too bad. Starting to fill up very nicely. Now I also have these flowers back here that would cast shadows, so I'm going to cast shadow here, shadows underneath and off, out this direction also, and here, and out in here. So, all right, nice and full. Very pretty. I just want a little light on this side of the tree. So I'm going to use a little bit of our sienna. I'm just going to give me a couple little hits of light on this side. I'm just really using the dirty brush at this point. And I'll light this. I like to light this up just a little bit. And here. Maybe up in here. Give that a little more dimension. Anything else, Mike? No, I think I'm in pretty good shape at this point. And can, with this much paint, and I do have quite a bit of it left on my palettes, I'm going to take my finger, put it in the paint. Now this is not flake white, this is titanium white, and there are some cumulonimbus clouds, the light's coming in this way, so I'm going to light it with my finger. And of course they pull, they point. If you ever ask a pilot, how do you know which way a cumulonimbus cloud is going? It points its way. So let me run this up. Nice white shadow to kind of pull the whiteness of these flowers up off the bottom. I'll put another one over here. Like this. And just kind of blend it in the bottom. Like that. And maybe I'll throw, I have all these blues and grays and so on, and I'll kind of darken with the bottom of the cloud. And this one too, so it has a little bit of dimension rather than just painting white blobs up there. And I'll give them here, here, and here. And it's a full painting. Very small, but very full painting. Lots of flowers, and actually that's a lot what Ender's Island looks like at this point in time. And I'm looking that I might do a little bit on my finger of light green, and let me just put a couple of things happening here. Just to, so that's not quite so flat and uninteresting. I'll throw a little extra light in back here. I got yellow on my finger, I got white on my fingers. As you can see, they're dirty. And so I'm just using dirty finger technique here. That's a little, I'll switch over, that's a little too much. Maybe a little in here. Dirty finger white into that yellow. A little bit of red pulled off of that flower. I'm fine with that. I'll let it sit in the background. Same here. Maybe a little bit more over here. And there we are. It's kind of a fun painting, very full of flowers, very simple to make. We got the curve, we got the flowers painted around the tree, we got the second crescent shape, and the flowers that are painted like wildflowers that we're standing in the middle of, and the flowers across the riprap wall. We got a very nice soft ocean in the background. The aerial perspective is working also. Well, that's it for this painting. Thank you very much.